For the first time in Africa, the African Gen Z stood up, bold, fearless, and united.
We want you as the government to be accountable. We have started with the president. We want you to be accountable for the finance bill. We want the governors to be accountable for the things that they're telling us, for these promises that they're making, that they're breaking. Because they're breaking families, people are struggling.
But the government silenced them. Some were given positions and fell into the trap. Some were tortured and threatened not to imagine criticizing a government again. They marched across cities' corridors. Government responded not with reforms, but with rifles, abductions, unmarked vans, and torture. This is a story of a generation that dared to dream, and the system silenced them. Voices silenced. Gen Z lost fight in Africa begins now. Maputo, Mozambique. Frelimo Party has been the ruling party in Mozambique for 49 years since their independence from Portugal in 1975. That sounds like a familiar move in Africa. In 2024 general elections, when it was least expected, the Frelimo Party was declared the winner, an election that almost 17 million eligible voters abstained over the fear of rogue systems. The results were widely disputed. Venancio Mondlane, one of the presidential aspirants on 16th October, called on his supporters, including those on social media where he has hundreds of thousands of followers, to join protest and stage general strikes against the handling of the elections, capitalizing on credible allegations from civil society groups and local and foreign observers that the process had been full of irregularities and fraud. Late on 18th of October, things got dark fast. Two of Mondlane's closest allies were shot dead in cold blood. His lawyer Elvino Diaz and Paulo Guambe, candidate from the Podemos party, were driving through Maputo when unknown gunmen attacked. They were both killed instantly. The brazen attack sent shockwaves through Mozambique and drew worldwide condemnation, including from UN Security General Antonio Guterres, the US, and the European Union. Meanwhile, back in Mozambique, the government promised to investigate, but let's be honest, we've seen that movie too. A few press statements, maybe a committee or two, and then silence. The opposition leader called for protest against the result, but this turned to be an expression of frustration the Mozambique citizens have had with the Frelimo regime over the years. Over 300 deaths reported in clashes with police and series of unlawful detentions. In March 2025, President Daniel Chapo and opposition leader Venancio Mondlane like nothing had happened. After months of protests, killings, and chaos, the protests ended with a smile and handshake. Some people called it peace, while others were like, seriously, after all that? Mr. Mondlane says he did this in search for national solution to the population crying for help in relation to the extreme insecurity in which Mozambique was. He further said they met President Chapo to start a mutual process to respond to the appeals and longings of Mozambican people. Citizens took to the social media. One said, "These selfish politicians should do handshake before lives are lost." Another wondered, 300 people died in Mozambique so that Mondlane can finally smile on camera. For those who bear no scars, the peace is back. For those who lost their loved ones, it is an eternity of unending pain. Nairobi, Kenya. Angry youths out to reject 2024-2025 finance bill. The proposed tax increase were heavily criticized by younger Kenyans and the opposition coalition who spearheaded the protests. The protests were mobilized using social media platforms like X, TikTok, and Instagram against the finance bill and incompetent and insensitive cabinet and high cost of living. On 18th June, the Kenyan Parliament amended the bill, removing some controversial clauses. The bill would nonetheless pass the next day, leading to a nationwide protest and heavy clashes by the security forces. On 25th of June, the protesters marched to Parliament and partially set it ablaze.
It is very painful for Kenya that a conversation this crucial was hijacked by dangerous people who have caused us the kind of loss we have incurred as a nation today. It is not in order or even conceivable that criminals pretending to be peaceful protesters can rain terror against the people, their elected representatives, and the institutions established under our Constitution, and expect to go scot-free.
On 26th June, President William Ruto held a press conference to withhold the signing of the bill. He would further dissolve his cabinet amid pressure from the young people.
21 and 1525B of the Constitution and Sections 12 of the Office of the Attorney General's Act decided to dismiss with immediate effect all the cabinet secretaries and Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, of the Cabinet of Kenya, except the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs and Diaspora Affairs, and of course, the Office of the Deputy President is not affected.
The protest left almost 60 people dead and several reports of abduction. But what really happened after the protest? Even though the opposition leader Raila Odinga and his ODM party were not entirely the organizers of the Gen Z protest, he stood to be the biggest beneficiary. William Ruto opted for a broad-based government, which saw him co-opting Raila Odinga allies into cabinet positions. Some very vocal Gen Zs were also given a chance in the government with imaginary positions, now keen to defend the government projects and progress. Of course, this strategy succeeded in cooling the political temperatures in Kenya. But did anything actually change? Let's call it a 50-50. Yes, the finance bill was scrapped. Yes, the cabinet was dissolved. But plot twist, most of the old faces magically reappeared in the new lineup, like musical chairs, but everyone still gets a seat. As to the 60 people who died and hundreds that were injured, they are still in the long queues of justice, coming into terms with the grim reality, with no hope for justice. For the rest, life continues, as if Gen Z protest never was. Nigeria. In July 2024, young people took to the streets of Nigeria, major cities, including the capital Abuja and the largest city Lagos, under the End Bad Governance banner. Now, over 22 lives are rotting in graves for simply calling out on government. In a 10-day protest, they expressed their anger at the rising cost of living, corruption, and poor governance.
Because if you see from the beginning, right till this time, Nigerians have been suffering.
President Bola Tinubu, who came to power in May 2023, had implemented economic policies that had fueled an inflation crisis. On his first day in office, he acted on the World Bank recommendation to end fuel subsidies, and has since devalued the currency, making important goods more expensive. As a result, the price of essentials soared, while the minimum wage was frozen. The government approved an increase only after protests started. The impact of inflation had been particularly severe in northern Nigeria, where community resorted to consuming low-quality, hard-to-process rice grains that were previously discarded. At least 22 people were killed, and over 1,100 arrests were done by the police, including Jide Oyekule, a photojournalist with the Daily Independent, who was arrested and detained by the police while reporting on the protest at Eagle Square in Abuja. Disturbing video footage and images emerged online, showing a group of visibly undernourished minors appearing before a courtroom in Abuja. Some of the youths were reported to have fainted from alleged hunger. According to media reports, the children were facing treason charges following a wave of arrest after the protest. However, the Nigeria police refuted these claims, maintaining that those in custody were adults and legally eligible for prosecution. Over 10 bright lives with big dreams are locked behind bars with treason charges today, while their mistake was to express their dissatisfaction and frustration. For those families whose relatives are free, life continues as if nothing ever happened. Uganda. In Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni warned people against protesting, saying they were playing with fire and accusing them of working with foreigners to promote chaos. The authorities denied permission to march. When people took to the streets regardless on 23rd July, the government deployed soldiers and arrested over 100 protesters. People were reportedly assaulted while in custody. Police also arrested opposition politicians at their party's headquarters. They have long accused President Yoweri Museveni of failing to prosecute corrupt senior officials who are politically loyal or related to him. What do you think? Does it mean the Gen Z cannot lead a revolution? Or is the system too strong?